Hello, you are watching the Post Up Show. Welcome back. We are happy to be back. Kaunda, Chama, Cyrus Rogers, we're back at it again. We're going to be discussing something a little different this week, though it is very topical. And it's something that we like to call the arms race. Are we seeing an NBA arms race where teams are tooling up as you get towards the postseason? Kaunda, you and I have had some serious discussions about this. We've seen the Nets, we've seen the Lakers, we've seen a lot of these guys really sort of get as many of the good players that were available to them onto their rosters and try and go for gold when it comes to the championship. Now, the question is this hurting or helping the NBA? Kaunda, what do you think?
Look, yes and no, and I hate to sit on the fence side.
That sounds like the fence is comfortable to you.
No, it's a yes and no situation. First of all, let's take it back. In recent years, funny enough, as I was doing my research, Cyrus, I found that a lot of these arms race super team situations always have a relationship with LeBron James.
That is true.
2008, Cyrus, 2008, the Boston Celtics brought in one Paul Pierce, one Kevin Garnett, and one Ray Allen to silence a young LeBron James that was in Cleveland starting to cause trouble. In the East, that's the only solution they could bring about in the East.
Is that really what they were doing? Trying to silence LeBron, or were they just trying to win a championship?
Both, because without silencing LeBron, Cyrus, they would have not won the championship.
Okay.
Now, speaking of LeBron, he sees frustrations in Cleveland and decides to go to Miami. What happens in Miami? They put him with D Wade and Chris Bosh, and they form that big three, which with the nice pieces around them, with your Udonis Haslem and Ray Allen came later. That you had your Mario Chalmers, and so you had some great players and some good players around them, and that looked like a super team. Because what were they trying to do initially was to beat the Dallas Mavericks at the time with Dirk Nowitzki.
Yeah.
Mavericks or the Spurs, because those were the two teams in the West that were giving them big trouble, because the Lakers had seen better days by that stage. But Cyrus, if you look at it now, let's look at what we're seeing in the league now. You got the Lakers rearing up. They've got two superstars in Anthony Davis and LeBron James. Then you've got great pieces around them. They're building a Kuzma up. They've brought in Dennis Schroeder. They got a Marc Gasol from Toronto. They brought in a Wesley Matthews recently. They brought in Andre Drummond. That is just the Lakers, Cyrus. And then what are they trying to do here? It's basically they're trying to go back to back, but they're trying to get as much on the market as they can pull into that Lakers. Actually, it was announced. It was also announced early this morning that they also acquired former Houston Rockets
Ben McLemore.
Ben McLemore. So that adds to their arsenal, Cyrus. And then on the East, Cyrus, you look at the Brooklyn Nets. The Brooklyn Nets, Cyrus, they're just short of getting LeBron James and Anthony Davis in order to put together an undisputed
this is potentially their starting five, right? Although obviously people are talking, look, maybe DeAndre Jordan comes in here instead of LaMarcus Aldridge and Blake coming off the bench, that type of thing. But that's exactly the point, though, Kaunda, in the sense that you have all these guys. You look at these teams. I mean, when you look at this Lakers team and you look at this Nets team. I mean, to start the season, this is what we were looking at. We were looking at these particular squads. And already at that point, I mean, to start the season, like after the Harden trade, this was basically almost a foregone conclusion that those are the two teams who would basically battle the way through the West and the East in order to face off in the NBA Finals. Now, the problem that I have here, though, Kaunda, is that as much as you say this is about trying to beat LeBron, and it really is, LeBron is also doing the same thing. In the sense that the Lakers teams are not just sitting still and he's carrying everything. He's got an Anthony Davis. He's got a Dennis Schroeder, a Montrezl Harrell, Marc Gasol, Andre Drummond, Kyle Kuzma, the list of players that they have that they can call on who could be difference makers is quite extensive. So the thing here is, what then happens to the rest of the teams? Do they then try and follow suit, or can you even do that? Because most of the better name big players are on teams already. So maybe the Harden move to the Nets might have solidified the Nets as being the championship chasers in the East. Because already with Kyrie and KD, that was a formidable lineup. Now you've got Harden there. Is this it? Is this really what we're waiting for? That we're just waiting for the Nets and the Lakers to make it to the NBA Finals?
See, Cyrus, you put it perfectly there, Cyrus. It sort of creates a boring season, because although we're watching other matchups and things go on and on, if it starts looking like a foregone conclusion, it says we're just watching games for the sake of games and waiting for the Lakers to face the Nets at the end of the season. But then again, let's not forget what the likes of the Clippers and the Denver Nuggets are doing in their own backyards, because they're the kind of teams that could creep up on a contender and surprise them, much like what the Miami Heat did last season, Cyrus, in the East. If the number one contender doesn't start playing or doesn't continue playing like a number one contender, you knock them out and you take that spot.
Yeah.
And that's exactly what the Miami Heat did to the Boston Celtics, who were better favored than them before that,
and the Milwaukee Bucks,
to the Milwaukee Bucks, who were better favored than them. And even at a certain point, Cyrus, even you and I noticed that the so-called defending champions at the time in the Toronto Raptors were not playing that bad. But we didn't see the Miami Heat creeping in through the back door and slapping everybody that was in their way.
But your point then is that you can have all the talent in the world, but you could get beaten by, a team like the Heat? Or are you saying that, we should just look at the playoffs as being the key thing? Because I think what this almost does for fans like you and I, it says maybe the regular season is redundant, because is seeding as important as it was before? Whereas in the past, you had to be the number one seed in order to stave off any of the challenges from the smaller teams. Now, because it's still a relative bubble, they're just dribs and drabs of fans coming through. Is the regular season really in peril? I mean, do you carry on watching, especially with the fervor that you were before?
You see, Cyrus, that's a two-part answer. For the fans, for the regular fans, your average fans, it becomes boring, because it starts looking like it's a foregone conclusion. So I'll only watch the NBA when we get to the postseason, because the regular season is getting kind of boring, because I know these guys are just playing for the sake of playing. So let me just wait for the postseason and see what happens there. But then again, Cyrus, you also also get intrigued by the fact that, let's look at what's happening to the Lakers at the moment, right? The Lakers, if they're not careful, could wind up as a 7 or 8 seed, because they're injury. They got injury problems at the moment. Imagine the Lakers were to wind up an 8 seed. This is just a hypothetical situation, right? Then the Clippers ended up in the top seed.
Yeah, I mean,
then you've already got a matchup that you preferred to be a possible Western Conference final.
Yeah.
Which is happening right there in the early stages in the first round.
Yeah.
So one of the favorites gets knocked out. You and I have actually seen this happen in the WNBA. But back to the NBA, that could happen, and that could change everything. Imagine you got the Lakers facing the Clippers in the first round. That changes everything, Cyrus. But then again, to me, to answer your question, and I've gone around the house and the yard and the neighborhood.
Not just the bush, but yeah.
I'm not a fan of super teams. They take away the excitement, Cyrus. There was a time at the beginning of this season, before like the Harden trade and that, things were looking very balanced. Houston had Harden, or Oladipo was somehow heading there, this kind of stuff. The Brooklyn Nets, you only had Kyrie basically and KD as the big players there. Then you had AD and LeBron at the Lakers, then at the Clippers. You had PG-13 and Kawhi. So it was looking kind of like, very balanced. Then all of a sudden, trades start getting made, and some teams like looking physically stronger on paper and during the game. So I think super teams or arming up, it's hurting for me, it's hurting the temperament of the fans and the
Yeah.
level of excitement, because some people just look like outright winners, so that you're like, yeah, I'm just waiting for the Nets to play the Lakers, or I'm
The
waiting for the
inevitable.
Nets to play the Clippers.
Right?
Yeah,
The
so
inevitable.
so
And that's
does
what it
that
feels like.
really excite you? Does that really excite you, Cyrus?
And
It
I
doesn't
guess it's
excite
one
me.
of those, because if you're a fan, right? If you're a fan of the Nets, you'll want to watch Nets games because you want to see what they can do. I think it's a bit weird because when you had KD on the Warriors, you had the exact same argument. Yet that Warriors team was exciting to watch. They did some really incredible things, and so you still tuned into those games to see what these guys could do. I don't know if you have the same level of excitement when you hear that Harden, Kyrie, and KD are at the Nets, and they've been joined by LaMarcus Aldridge, Blake Griffin, and DeAndre Jordan. You know, it just seems weird. But I do think that there's also a part of this that fans are buying into, which is, let's just see, because you never know what's going to happen. This is basketball, stuff happens. And I guess in a way, that's also why they've created, 7-game series, is that the better teams should come out on top, as opposed to the teams that can shock you in one game or 2 games. Because in the WNBA, we've seen that. You can play your entire season and then get a seeding that doesn't get you outside of those one of playoff games, and before you know it, you're back at the team hotel thinking, okay, now I got to pack my bags. So I think that the critical thing for me is, I do think that it has a destabilizing effect when it comes to the regular season, but I also think that seeding will play a part in this entire season as well. And let's not forget, as we always say, injuries happen. We'll touch wood. There are already guys who have been hurt and will continue to be hurt just because of the way things are with, the current COVID environment, how many games people are playing, all of that stuff. I think that what we're going to see is a league that will get into the postseason almost hobbled over the finish line, and then we'll start to see who really is doing what. Because there's a lot of disrespect going on out there, Kaunda, when we look at the fact that the Utah Jazz is the number 1 team in the NBA right now. Nobody's talking about them. And right behind them are the Phoenix Suns, and nobody's talking about them. And the Milwaukee Bucks have also improved their team, and they've done it by not necessarily getting another like a James Harden, because they just didn't have the pieces to go for him, but having Drew Holiday on that team with Chris Middleton and Giannis is a big plus. And then they've brought a lot of guys in to help them. I mean, I saw recently Austin Rivers has joined the Bucks. So they've got a fairly solid bench. And if there's one thing that the Warriors showed when they were going to their titles, is have a solid bench unit. That means you don't lose production, and then you're able to win games. Currently, the Warriors are absolute trash. But when you look at somebody like the Lakers, they can still remain competitive even without LeBron and without Anthony Davis, and even somebody like Andre Drummond, who they hadn't really counted on before, but they're not missing him as much. So I do think that it's important for teams to, like you say, stay balanced. But at the same time, the league has got a bit of an image problem, in the sense that, how do we keep people engaged with this? Because it's not just us who's feeling like, okay, it's over. You look at a lot of the different media houses and the sporting celebrities who talk about the game. They say, when you see a team like this, that's it. We should stop watching. We should stop watching. Or when you see, this sort of thing lining up, and you're like, okay, this would be a great matchup, but is everybody involved? In a way, Kaunda, when you see these things, doesn't this look like Wu-Tang and their affiliates? You almost see like, okay, that's U-God, that's Jizza, that's RZA. You can just about make out all of the Wu-Tang members there. Do you think, though, and I guess we'll end off the show like this, but do you think this will make for a better postseason than a regular season? Or do you think people are just waiting to see what happens?
Look, Cyrus, you mentioned a very good point, that you bring about a very good point when you say the Jazz are doing well, the Suns are doing well, but everybody still keeps talking about the Lakers and Clippers and Nuggets. Why? Because of the way their teams are put together, Cyrus. They're just saying, thanks for renting the 1 and 2 spot, but when it gets real, which is in the postseason, thanks for coming. But the real owners of the party are just waiting for you to get tired or for you to lose focus, and they'll take over the show. And that is a sad reality, Cyrus, when you start putting together these strong teams. And I know you say maybe, the likes of the Golden State Warriors have done this before, but the Golden State Warriors, I think they were fortunate enough that everything had been happening, in Spurs territory, in Miami Heat territory, and that in Laker territory. Then all of a sudden, this franchise that had a 50-year drought or so, all of a sudden starts winning championships, and they had built a team from the ground up. These guys were not traded from anywhere. It was Steph, it was Clay, it was Draymond. These guys had been drafted by the Warriors. That's why the excitement was there. It wasn't like bringing LeBron from here and putting him there, bringing Ray Allen from here, putting him there, and that kind of stuff. It was how did
it felt organic.
Corporate? It was an organic growth. That's what they say in corporate, right? And that's why the Warriors felt so exciting. But if you look at what's happening now, Cyrus, it's like you just think, oh, we got this car, so we're going to put these super tires on it. Then we're going to turbocharge it. Oh yeah, can you also buy fins? Yeah, we'll put the fins on it. When everybody else is not able.
It's Fast and the Furious 75. You know, you got all these supercars everywhere.
And if you ask me, in all fairness, I love the league. I love the players that play in the league, but having such lopsided teams, and I know it's fair game in that if you can afford a guy, you get him, and if he wants to come to your team, like James wanted to go to New York, to Brooklyn, it's fair enough. James Harden wanted to go and he went. But at the end of the day, if you look at it in terms of balancing teams, Cyrus, it becomes boring when it's almost a foregone conclusion. Cyrus, honestly speaking, if KD and Klay Thompson had not gotten injured 2 years ago, did you really think
the Warriors would probably beat the Raptors? Yeah, because they would have had more firepower and options. No, I totally get you. And I mean, we're even forgetting Boogie Cousins got injured in that as well, and he was also starting to. So, and he's also going to be a player within this particular arms race, because you look at him joining the Clippers. I just think that what's interesting about it though, Kaunda, is that perhaps there's an argument also to be made to say, haven't the best teams always been part of an arms race in the past? In the sense that you had quite a few, like a couple of stars, and then mid-level guys who rose up to the occasion, as opposed to what we're currently seeing now, where all stars are teaming up to form the Monstars. And I think that's basically what we're seeing, is that, you saw my Facebook reference there. We're seeing the Monstars, and you got to root for them. I think we're going to have to leave it there, Kaunda. I know that you've got a lot more to say, Kay, on all of these things, but we're going to have to do that on postupzone.com. But thank you for watching, everybody. Make sure you like this video, subscribe to the channel, and we'll be giving you more basketball takes and insight from us here in the African continent. But from me, Cyrus Rogers, you can see my handle, Cyrus J. Rogers, and for him, Kaunda Chama, the real Kaunda. You're the only one now. It's till next time, and enjoy watching the show.